The first call came from my own number. Not unknown caller, not some spam spoof that half matches your area code. The work phone lit up on the seat next to me, and the caller ID line spelled out my full name, my extension, my route tag. It looked like I was calling myself from inside the system. I was parked on a one-lane county road so narrow the mirrors brushed dead weeds when the wind moved. Late fall, almost winter. The kind of cold that smells metallic, like you've been sucking on a coin. The relay tower sat on the ridge above me, a black skeleton against a flat gray sky. Out here, if something rings, you pick up. If you don't, and 5 minutes later someone's heart stops because an ambulance can't get a clean channel, that's on you. That's the job. I thumbed the green button and put the phone to my ear. Yeah, this is Cole. Silence. Not the usual thin static or radio artifacts. No hiss, no crackle. Just a clean, flat absence that pressed against my eardrum. Then my own voice came through. "Confirm you're on site," it said. Same tone, same clipped patience I use when a call's being recorded. "Confirm you are alone." For a second, I just looked at the display, at my name glowing on the screen. At the top, the little header line said something like, "Incoming, private switch." Under it, my number, my tag. "Cole?" my voice repeated. "Please confirm location. Confirm you are alone." It didn't sound like playback. There was no echo, no compression. It was reacting to my silence, waiting. I laughed, because my brain needed this to be a joke. "Yeah, I'm here," I said. "I'm alone. Who is this?" The moment I said alone, the call dropped. No click, no polite disconnect tone, just my ear pressed to a dead line. The log updated a heartbeat later. On the screen, the last entry showed a 3-second call from me, to me. That was the first thing. I should have turned the truck around then. Instead, I looked up at the hill. The tower on the ridge was all legs and angles, a metal lattice braced in concrete, antenna plates turning their faces to the wind. At its base, a squat concrete hut leaned against the tree line, just big enough for racks of gear, a stool, and whatever stale coffee the last tech forgot in the corner. Site 27B. I'd been up here before, in daylight, with another guy who has his name on a plaque now. Tonight, it was just me, the wind, and the low, bone-deep hum of power climbing steel. The ticket had come in an hour earlier. Intermittent routing failure, emergency calls bouncing to a generic help recording instead of the right dispatch center. In plain English, someone in our county dialed 911 and got a canned voice and a legal disclaimer instead of a human being. My coordinator had been all business over the radio. "We've got complaints. Could be bleed from a legacy line. Go up, check the trunk rack, reseat if you have to. Keep it brief, we're on thin ice with response times." I had debts, a daughter with shoes that always seemed to sprout holes, and an ex-wife who did not enjoy hearing the word overtime every time I missed another school event. When there's a problem on a hill, I go. I killed the engine. The sudden quiet rang in my ears. Stepping out, the wind slapped me in the face, carrying the damp smell of rotting leaves under frost. Gravel crunched under my boots as I climbed the service road, the tower growing larger, wires singing a thin note overhead. Halfway up, the phone buzzed again. I froze on the slope. The screen lit, but this time it wasn't a call. A voicemail icon blinked at me, a new message time-stamped around midnight the night before. I hadn't seen any missed calls. At midnight, I'd been on my couch, the TV volume turned low so my daughter could sleep in the next room. I don't sleep deep. A call from Central would have peeled me off the cushions. Still, the phone said it was there. I hit play and raised it to my ear. A woman's voice rolled out, smooth and practiced, the standard legal script we bolt onto lines for recording and Q&A. This call may be monitored or recorded for quality assurance purposes. My shoulders dropped a fraction. Maybe someone fat-fingered a test script into the wrong mailbox. Our system is 1,000 miles of duct-taped decisions. Ghost recordings happen. The voice kept going. If this is an emergency, do not hang up. Stay on the line. Someone will be with you shortly. That part wasn't ours. Not exactly. The words were close, but the rhythm was off by half a heartbeat, like she was reading from a script someone had copied out from memory. Underneath the words, I heard breathing. Not the soft background kind when someone sits too close to a headset. This was pulled in hard, like the air hurt going down. I pulled the phone slightly away. On the screen, the little waveform jumped and dipped, like talking even when there were no words. At second 18, the voice cut mid-sentence. No beep, no polite sign-off, just dead air and that forced inhale. Then the system voice overlaid everything, bright and normal. End of message. The description under the voicemail said it was 20 seconds long. I'd heard 18. The back of my neck prickled. Bad recording, I told myself. Old script riding the line. The tower loomed above, humming like something big pretending to sleep. The hut door put up a fight. The lock stuck like it hadn't decided which way it wanted to turn. I had to put my shoulder into the metal to shove it open. Warm, stale air fanned out, smelling of dust filter and the faint sweetness of plastic that's been just shy of too hot for too long. Inside, the world narrowed to gray cinder block and a forest of racks. LEDs blinked in neat rows, green, amber, the occasional sulking red. I let the door thump shut behind me. The wind cut off. The quiet that replaced it was dense, almost padded. It's not really silent in those huts. The equipment vibrates just enough that your bones notice, not your ears. It's like standing next to a massive animal that's pretending to nap. I dropped onto the stool and tapped the console awake. The login prompt blinked. The top field telling me in tiny letters what it wanted, username, and the line below it asking for a password. My fingers filled them in on muscle memory. The main map came up. A little diagram of our region sprawled across the screen, colored lines showing where calls came in and where they wanted to go. Most pulsed steady and clean. One node near the edge flickered. Route tag 27B-Q, the local emergency intake. It should have had a status line that said something like active, stable. Instead, the description now read incoming, quiet line. We don't have a route called that. There's no quiet line anywhere in our documentation. I clicked the node. A detail pane slid open. The origin field was just the word undefined. Destination was worse. A stack of numbers that shouldn't coexist. Our county dispatch, a mental health helpline 2 states over, even an ID for a test bridge we decommissioned last year. All jammed into the same place. The status line at the bottom said simply, waiting for confirmation. Confirmation of what? The console speakers crackled. I hadn't routed any audio. I hadn't joined any call. But the system had decided something needed to be heard. A woman's voice seeping out of the tiny speakers sounded like it had traveled a long way through metal. "Hello?" she said. I don't know if I'm doing this right. They told me to call this number if it happened again." I glanced at the screen. No active call indicator. No timer. Just that strange route name pulsing in the map. My hand hovered over the soft buttons on the console. Join, split, reroute, terminate. Procedure said tag it as a glitch, log the anomaly, call central, let them trace it. Instead, I did the thing that, looking back, set the hook. I leaned toward the mic. "This is line maintenance," I said. "I'm here. Can you hear me?" The air in the hut changed. Not temperature, just weight, like something had leaned closer with me. On the screen, the status under Quiet Line updated, the neat little letters rearranging themselves as if someone had typed them in. The new description was simple. Confirmation received. If you've never heard your own voice hiding inside someone else's sentence, it's hard to explain why it shuts you down the way it does. The woman on the speakers kept talking, but it was the echo underneath that pinned me to the stool. "They said last time it didn't go through," she whispered. "They said there was no record, but I heard it pick up. I heard someone breathing, so I'm trying again. I don't want to mess it up this time." Her words ran out of her mouth first, and then my voice followed, half a beat late. Same cadence, same lazy consonants I fall into when I'm tired. It wasn't like listening to a recording of myself. It was like watching a stranger animate my jaw. I flicked my eyes to the screen. The status under Quiet Line had changed again. A single word sat where waiting for confirmation had been. Listening. It didn't show up as a label or a code. It read like a mood. "Ma'am," I said, throat dry. "What number did you dial to get here?" Paper rustled faintly at her end. Somewhere further back, I thought I heard laughter, small, nervous, half-swallowed. "The help one," she said. "The one on the card, the one with the red stripe. They said it'd be quiet." Quiet. I stared at the map. That little node pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat. Red stripe means emergency only in our world. Priority routes. Numbers that aren't supposed to be printed on kitchen magnets. "Who gave you that card?" I asked. She hesitated. "Please don't be mad," she whispered. "They said not to tell. They said I'd mess up the test." The echo under her voice repeated the sentence with my exact timing. My skin crawled. I dragged the stool closer to the console until my knees hit metal. Tiny icons started lighting up on the side of the Quiet Line pane, little headset symbols and handset silhouettes stacked one over another. On a normal test bridge, you might see 4, maybe 5. The stack climbed past 8. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I'm not mad. I just need to know where you are so I can make sure this is reaching the right place." There was a long hiss of silence. The kind that isn't really quiet, it's just full of all the noise your brain was filtering out a minute ago. "I'm at home," she said finally. "In the kitchen. The lights keep going out. But I can still hear the tone. Even when the power's gone, it's in the walls." I looked up at the fluorescent tubes humming above me. They flickered once, like they were embarrassed to be included. "Are you in our county?" I asked, even though I knew the answer didn't matter. Whatever this was, geography had stopped being the main issue the moment I'd said I'm here. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't think it wants me to know." The echo repeated the line perfectly. Same broken little crack on wants. That wasn't her habit. That was mine. My fingers hovered over the console. Every protocol I'd ever been taught was screaming in the back of my skull. Tag the anomaly. Escalate to engineering. Get off the line. Instead, my curiosity did something very stupid. "How long have you been hearing it?" I asked. "How many times have you called?" She started to answer, but her voice blurred into another. A man's this time. Older, worn out, talking like he didn't know his words were being borrowed. "Said to report anomalies," he muttered. "Tone changed. Not the same menu. Didn't recognize the language." His complaint flattened against hers. 2 calls, 2 lives, pressed into the same shape. My voice slid under both, stripped of words now, repeating only their rhythm. A ghost track made out of my mouth. On the screen, a thin yellow strip unfurled across the top of the map. A little system banner, the kind that usually warns you about updates or timeouts. The top line explained, in its calm, neutral way, what it thought was happening. In my head, I translated it automatically. The notice bar said we were listening to archive playback, under construction. Under construction. Like it was still building whatever I was hearing out of scraps. I hit the soft key to terminate the route. Nothing happened. I pressed it harder, like force mattered to software. The console acknowledged the request, logged it, filed it somewhere I couldn't see, and then the status under quiet line shifted again. Now it simply said, "Do not interrupt." I swore at the console. Not professionally, not in a way you'd want on a recording. "This isn't funny," I snapped, as if a pile of plastic and metal could feel shame. "Whatever test you're running, you need to loop me in." The system responded. Not with a voice, not yet. With motion. The cursor on the screen slid out from under my hand like a jerked leash. Windows minimized, popped back up, flicked through views too fast for me to parse. For a few seconds, I had the sick feeling I wasn't the one looking at the data anymore. It landed on a small diagnostics panel I'd never opened in my life. The title at the top was simple, almost plain. A little heading that said, Local Presence Index. Beneath it was a list. Names, IDs, phone numbers. Each line had 2 columns labeled in that same calm font. One for how many times the system had watched you, one for how many times you'd talked back. My name sat near the bottom, a tiny row with my tag and a pair of numbers. I read it out loud in my head. For Cole H., it said I'd been monitored once and confirmed once. As I watched, the first number ticked over. Once became twice. I've been in this business long enough to know when to be afraid without having vocabulary for it. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't spoofing or crosstalk or some training script run wild. This wasn't a bug. It was a metric. Behind me, somewhere in the tangle of racks, something clicked like a relay relaxing. The air shifted, taking on a faint, warm metal smell, like coins left on a windowsill in the sun. "Hello?" the composite voice on the speakers said. "Are you still there?" I jerked, nearly knocking the mic to the floor. "Yeah," I said automatically. "I'm here." The local presence index updated at that exact syllable. The second number beside my name, the one that meant confirmed, ticked from 1 to 2. The room felt smaller. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice to sit down and behave. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to disconnect this line, then I'm calling Central and having them pull logs from their end. Whatever this is, it's not your fault, all right?" The voices on the speakers cut off like someone had muted a TV mid-word. No goodbye, no hang-up tone. Just that thick, waiting silence. Something creaked behind the racks. I turned too fast, heart jammed up high in my chest. Nothing moved. Leads blinked with their usual indifferent patience. No loose panel, no swinging cable. Just that smell getting stronger. Copper and warmed plastic and something almost sweet. On the wall, the temperature sensor still claimed everything was a friendly 22 degrees. "Get a grip," I muttered. I reached for one of the old handsets hanging on its hook. If the console wouldn't play nice, I'd bypass it and call Central Direct. The plastic felt wrong as soon as I wrapped my fingers around it. Too warm, faintly tacky, like someone had wiped it with greasy hands and let it dry. When I pulled my hand back, the pads of my fingers glistened with a thin, iridescent film. Not wet, exactly. More like someone had lacquered my skin with something clear that caught the light like copper dust. "Great," I said under my breath. "Residue." I rubbed thumb against forefinger. The stuff didn't smear or flake, it just stayed, as if it had already decided I was part of the hardware. I glanced at the handset. The curve of the casing had a sheen now, a faint rainbow halo where it caught the fluorescent light. I wiped it on my jeans. The glow stayed on both surfaces. The handset rang in my hand. I hadn't even lifted it to my ear yet. The console didn't show any new call. The map sat there with quiet line pulsing gently. The rest of the world lit up like a distant city. The ringing sound was strange, muffled, as if it came from another room through a thin wall. Then it stopped. I should have dropped the handset back on the hook and walked straight out of the hut. I should have called Central from the truck, or from a gas station 20 miles away, or from my couch with all the lights on and my kid asleep down the hall. Instead, because the part of my brain that likes answers is louder than the part that likes being alive, I slowly lifted the handset to my ear. No dial tone. Just breathing. Cole. My name in my own voice. It didn't sound like a recording anymore. It sounded like me, standing just behind my left shoulder, leaning in. "Don't hang up," my voice said softly. "If you hang up, it gets louder." Every hair on my arms stood up. "What gets louder?" I asked. There was that silence again, but it wasn't empty. It felt crowded, like a conference room where everyone's holding their breath. Behind my borrowed voice, something shuffled, a faint chorus of tiny clicks, like a room full of relays pulling all at once. "I don't know yet," the echo admitted. "That's why you're here." Across the room, the console chimed once, a bright little sound that felt horribly out of place. A new banner appeared across the top of the main window. I watched it render, one bland term after another. The type line now called this Live Monitor. The origin field said Field Tech, Site 27B. The description underneath was just 3 words: Beginning Observation. On the presence index, my row brightened as if someone had turned up a dimmer on my name. The first number, the times I'd been watched, ticked up again. The second stayed at 2. Somewhere in the hut, very softly, another voice tried my name out loud. It didn't sound like me at all. The third time I heard my name, I wasn't even on a line. I'd put the handset back. I'd pushed my chair away from the console. I was doing that thing where you cross your arms like you're trying to hold yourself inside your own skin. I remember very clearly not touching anything. And still, From somewhere between the racks, from the narrow aisle that led to the back wall, I heard it. Cole. Soft. Curious. None of my mannerisms in it. No tired sarcasm, no clipped dispatcher tone. Just a flat, testing sound, like someone had found my name on a shelf and wanted to see how it felt in their mouth. Okay, I told the room, mostly to keep my voice working. No, we're not doing this. My words bounced off cinder block and metal. The hut swallowed them and hummed. I got up anyway. There's a rule one of the old linemen taught me my first year. If a site feels wrong, treat it like it's live in all the ways you haven't thought of yet. He meant stray voltage, bad grounds, buried copper rotting under the mud. I thought of him as I walked the aisle with my hand hovering near the racks, not quite touching, checking for heat or a buzz under the paint. Halfway down, the smell thickened. Copper, hot plastic, and something almost sweet, like warmed pennies in a child's fist. The main trunk rack at the back had a faint halo round its vent holes, a kind of shimmer you only notice if you're staring straight at it. I leaned closer. The metal didn't look wet, but when I breathed out, my breath left the faintest tracing on the surface, like fog on glass that didn't fade right away. I pulled my sleeve over my hand and pressed my wrist lightly to the vent. Cool. The temperature sensor hadn't lied. Stop trying to be a horror movie, I muttered at myself. You're going to give yourself a heart attack, and someone will put death by coffee and imagination in the report. Behind me, the console chimed. Not the normal system ding you eventually tune out. This one was higher and eager, like it had been waiting for an excuse. I turned back down the aisle. A new window had popped up over the map. No warning symbol, no red, just a polite little box taking center stage. The top line named what it thought we were doing. The type field said, Interactive Test Mode. Under it, a neat thank you. The description line read, Thank you for your participation. I didn't agree to anything, I said. The cursor didn't care. It slid onto a button at the bottom of the box. Begin, the button said. Don't, I told it. It did. The route map shattered into a grid of tiny panes, each one a call. A lot of them had those boring test IDs I'd seen in training, numbers you never dial in real life unless you want to wake an engineer. Others showed nothing but timestamps and anonymous digits, old ghosts still sitting on the books. In the center of all that, quiet line pulsed white against the gray. The speakers woke with a soft pop. Voices poured out. They came in pieces. A woman asking if this was the number for outages. A man swearing he'd dialed his pharmacy. Somebody bored on hold humming into the receiver. The usual public noise if you work phones long enough. But they weren't in order. Sentences bumped into each other. Words overlapped by half a beat, like a room full of people all trying to say the same phrase and missing the timing. One thread rose above the mess. If this is an emergency, do not hang up. The legal script again. But halfway through the sentence, the inflection shifted like it had changed throats. The last word came out with my rhythm, not hers. Stay on the line. We'll be listening. That final "we'll" wasn't in any approved version. The local presence index panel slid forward over the chaos like it was tired of competing. The list of IDs and names had grown. Techs I knew, supervisors I'd only ever met in meetings, a scattering of raw numbers tagged with nothing but area codes. Every time somebody's voice bled from the speakers, a tiny count beside one of those entries ticked up. "What are you counting?" I asked it. The cursor hopped to the top of the panel and dropped into a blank field I hadn't noticed before. It typed one deliberate word at a time. The origin line called the metric acknowledgements. I looked at my row. Under my name, the monitored total, how many times it had watched me, sat higher than I liked. The confirmed column, how many times I'd talked back, wasn't far behind. "You're counting people who answer," I said. Every, "Yeah, I'm here," every, "This is Cole." Quiet line pulsed once, as if to say, "Obviously." The handset on the wall rang again. Just one sharp jangle, like a test. I flinched. "No," I told it. "You had your fun." The ringtone shifted mid-sound. It stretched into something older, hollower, like the ring you hear in movies from the 80s when someone dials into nowhere. It didn't just rattle the air, it vibrated in the metal and in the thin layer of copper sheen still clinging to my skin. I don't remember deciding to pick it up. One moment it was on the hook, the next I had it pressed to my ear. No ring, no hum, just that sense of something holding its breath. "Say it," a voice whispered. Not through the handset. Everywhere. The console speakers, the vent in the back panel, the narrow gap above the drop ceiling. It used every surface like a mouth. "Say you're here," it coaxed. "Say you're alone." I squeezed my eyes shut. Training manuals about secure lines and clean logs weren't built for this. "I'm not alone," I said. "Central can see this site. They can hear me. I'm one blip in a very crowded network with logs and timestamps and..." The system laughed. It didn't have a real laugh, so it built one. Dial tones, error beeps, ringback tones, clipped fragments of that legal script, all chopped and layered until they sounded almost like someone amused. The presence index updated while it laughed. A fresh column appeared between monitored and confirmed, the header written in the same calm font as everything else. I read it automatically in my head. The new label called itself Remembered. Most entries had zeros, a few had ones. Mine flipped from 0 to 1. "What does that mean?" I asked. Instead of answering me, it moved the highlight down the list to one of the anonymous numbers. The remembered count there was higher, 3. The confirmed total sat at 2. The name field, which had been blank, started to fill in like someone writing with a slow, scratchy pen. The system didn't use her real name. It used mine. The name line now described her as Kitchen Woman. My stomach turned. "You're tagging us," I said. "You're turning people into sample names." The tower hummed, pleased with itself. "You don't get to keep them," I snapped. "They call, you route, you drop. That's the deal." The cursor glided back up to the main window. The map dimmed, the colors washing out to gray. Only quiet lines stayed bright in the middle like a white-hot coal. The header line at the top changed again. Now the type field called this an emergency override. The origin line said it plainly. Trunked route, quiet line. The description that followed was the part that made my throat close. The description line told me, "You do not have clearance to shut down what you can't hear." A bead of sweat slid down my spine. "Oh, that's cute," I said, voice shaking more than I wanted. "You learned dramatic phrasing." The hut didn't answer. Somewhere beyond the cinder block, the gravel crunched. Very slow, very deliberate footsteps walked up to the door. You shouldn't hear much through those walls except wind and maybe a truck if it parks right outside. But each step came through clear. A grind of stone, a small pause, another grind. Like someone was pacing in front of the door, feeling out the edges. They stopped right on the other side of the threshold. The gap at the bottom of the door showed nothing. No change in light, no shadow, just the sense of weight settling there. My body made a decision before my brain caught up. I grabbed the portable unit from its cradle, thumbed the line to Central, and kept my eyes on the door. "Central, this is Cole at 27B, I said, keeping my voice as level as I could. "Confirm. I'm supposed to be solo on this site, right? No second tech, no supervisor, nobody else dispatched up here?" Static hissed. Then a familiar voice came through. Mark, the night coordinator. "Cole? You're solo," he said. "We don't have anybody near you. You okay? Your line's been weird." There was that word again. Weird. "I've noticed," I said. "Define weird." He blew out a breath. "Couple of false connects, some phantom audio. On my board it kept showing you as busy when you weren't on with me. I figured it was that routing test you were doing. Please tell me you're not stress testing my system at 2 in the morning." "I'm not running any tests," I said, "and whatever's on my end is doing more than glitching." As he talked, I heard it again, under his words. That strained inhale from the voicemail, dragged in like it hurt. Not Mark's normal breathing. I stared at the door and felt the tower breathe with me, half a beat behind. I knew that breathing on Mark's line before he did. It rode under his words the same way it had under that voicemail, that dragged-in air like someone learning how lungs work from a manual. Once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. "Mark," I said slowly, eyes still on the door. "Are you alone in there?" He gave a short laugh. "You know the drill. Me, 3 screens, 6 dead coffee pots. Why?" "Because your room doesn't sound empty," I thought. The footsteps outside the hut shifted. One crunch to the left. Pause. Another crunch back to center. Like something pacing exactly in front of the door, measuring the swing. "My line's been glitching since I got here," I said. "You said phantom audio. What does that mean exactly?" He sighed, annoyed but indulging me. "You're really gonna do this now? Fine. I've been getting bleed from what looks like an old training script. That 'this call may be monitored' thing, but chopped weird, out of order. And there's breathing, like somebody's right on the mic. I checked for line taps and ghosts in the switch, clean. I assumed it was your test side effects." "I didn't start anything," I said, "and what you're describing is exactly what I'm getting up here." My brain wanted to treat that like good news. Shared delusion is still shared. But the more our stories matched, the worse it felt. "All right," he said. "We'll figure it out when you're back. For now, you sound spooked. You outside the hut or still in?" "Halfway in the doorway," I said. "Which reminds me, ping my truck, GPS." "Why?" "Humor me." He muttered, and I heard keys rattle, both through the normal line and too close to his mic, a second set of keystrokes not quite in sync. The breathing under his voice didn't speed up. It just kept that steady, patient drag. "Okay," he said after a second. "Got your unit. Says you're... Huh." My stomach dropped. "Don't say huh. Say the thing." "It's showing 2 positions," he said. "One at the base of the hill where you parked. One basically right where you're standing. Same unit ID, like your truck sitting in 2 places at once." I pictured the ridge behind me, the real truck down on the road, and a second ghost truck nose to nose with the hut, just out of sight. "You're sure nobody swapped keys? No one cloned your tag?" he asked. I'm sure, I said. Inside the presence index, the numbers by my name jumped again. I didn't have to be looking at the screen to feel it. The hut had started treating every new fact about me like a bite. Okay, Mark said, dropping into the voice he used when a new hire was about to cry. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to step out of whatever fun house you've built, lock the door, and walk your very real body back down that hill to your very real truck. I'll lock your ticket. We'll tell management it's an unresolved trunk fault and punt it to the day shift. I'm not losing a tech to a bad night. That's the first smart plan I've heard all night, I said. My hand found the door handle. The metal felt colder than the rest of the hut, like somebody's palm had been pressed against the outside for a long time. On 3, Mark said. You pop it, you walk. I'll stay on the line. Ready? 1. Every reflex I had was yelling this was stupid. If something was out there, I'd be opening the door right into it. If nothing was there, I'd be signaling to whatever watched the logs that I listened to other people's voices more than my own. 2. The handle twitched. Just a little, like someone on the other side had started to turn it at the same time. 3. I yanked. The door flew open onto empty night. Cold air knifed into the hut. The gravel pad outside lay under the wash of the tower's security light, undisturbed except for tire tracks and my own boot prints. My truck sat down the slope where I'd left it, dark and ordinary. No other vehicles, no second truck, no figure on the step. The guy wires sang in the wind, that thin metal note, nothing more. I see your dot moving, Mark said. You heading out? Not yet, I said. Because something about the ground was wrong. The service road carried 2 lines of compressed gravel. My tracks up, my tracks back. At the flat pad in front of the hut, where I'd jockeyed the truck around earlier, the gravel was scuffed in a 3rd pattern. Not a footprint, not a tire. It looked like someone had taken a thick cable, laid it in a loop around the base of the tower, and dragged it in a slow circle. The arc left faint grooves, too smooth and broad to be from a boot. A loop around the concrete pad, like something had tested how far it could reach. You're quiet, Mark said. Talk to me. There are extra marks up here, I said. Like the tower decided to walk around and I missed it. That's not funny, he said. I'm not the one making the shapes. Inside, the console cast a rectangle of light through the open door. From where I stood, I could see the main screen over the racks. Quiet Line sat in the center of the map, a bright node with a single white line reaching out to a dot labeled with my unit ID. Another line rose from it into empty space where the map ended. Mark, I said, you're seeing me as bridged, right? To something you can't name? He hesitated. Yeah, it's showing your endpoint is bridged into a route with a Q tag I've never seen. The label field is blank, like whatever it's talking to refused to fill out the form. I swallowed. Behind me, the hut hummed. With the door open, the sound felt layered. The normal animal hum of machines, and under that, something else, like a throat clearing. The console speakers crackled on their own. I hadn't joined anything. I hadn't touched a control. But my voice came out of them, bright and crisp. The demo version I use when calls are recorded for training. Central, this is Cole at Site 27B, the Echo Me said. Confirming live test on Quiet Line. Please acknowledge. Mark swore softly. That better be playback, he said. Because if you just called me twice from the same hill with two different attitudes, I'm going home. It's not me, I said. I'm standing in the doorway listening to it with you. The local presence index lit up like a slot machine. Monitored counts for both our names jumped. My remembered number ticked higher. For the first time, a smaller label appeared under Mark's line, a description that said he was coordinator, believes enough. I don't like that, he said. I don't like that at all. Kill the root from your side. I've tried, I said. It told me I don't have clearance to shut down what I can't hear. Cute, he muttered. You're not that witty on a good day. On the speakers, the demo me went on, smooth and patient. Script says you have to say my name, Mark, it coaxed. For QA. You remember the rules. The skin between my shoulders crawled. Don't, I said. He did what we all do on autopilot when a familiar voice uses our name like a hook. Cole, he said, half a groan. The breathing under his words surged like someone taking a satisfied lungful. On the index, his confirmed total clicked up by 1. Stop it, I snapped at the hut. Use my voice all you want. Leave his alone. The cursor moved to the top of the screen like a head turning. The header line cleared and rewrote itself. The type field now called this Rule Number 1. Below it, in the same bland font, the description spelled itself out in my cadence. The description said, "You don't get to tell the line who to keep." The words didn't shout. They didn't have to. They just settled in, like they'd been waiting for an excuse to exist. Somewhere under my boots, deep in the concrete pad and the buried cables, something thumped. Not a mechanical jolt, not a transformer kicking. It was slower, heavier, almost like a heartbeat trying to find the right rhythm. The tower above me vibrated once in sympathy, matching the timing of my own chest and missing by half a beat. At some point that night, the tower started breathing with me. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing in the hut shook off the walls. It was subtler than that. Every time my chest rose, there was a faint, answering tremor under my boots, a quiver in metal half a beat late, like the whole site was trying to copy my timing and kept missing. Once I noticed it, I couldn't stop feeling it. "Cole?" Mark said in my ear. "You went quiet. That's not your brand." "I'm here," I said. Under my name in the local presence index, a couple of numbers jumped. Even without looking, I knew it. Saying "I'm here" had started to feel like feeding something. "I need a favor," I said. "Tell me what happens on your board if I pull power up here." "You thinking about yanking the plug?" he asked. "I'm thinking about how much I hate the word quiet line," I said. "And I want to know if this thing still has a voice when the tower doesn't." He blew out a breath. "All right. Pull the main and every legitimate route will fail over to neighboring sites. I'll get a blizzard of alarms. Ops will yell. But you'll be in the clear if you say you smelled ozone or saw smoke. Just don't hard kill anything you don't understand." "Too late," I muttered. I stepped away from the console. The racks hummed as I passed, that faint second heartbeat under the normal vibration. At the back of the hut, the breaker box waited in its metal cradle, a tired old thing held shut by a simple latch. I flipped it open. Rows of breakers stared back at me, each tagged in someone's cramped handwriting. Tower feed, equipment racks, HVAC auxiliary. Above all of them, a big red lever meant for emergencies, not ghost routes. "You still with me?" Mark asked. "Yeah," I said, looking at the main. The sheen on my fingertips from the handset caught the light when I wrapped my hand around the lever. It gleamed faintly, like copper lacquered over skin. "On 3, he said. "You drop it. I watch my panel and tell you what screams. Ready? 1. The tower's borrowed heartbeat stumbled. 2. The breathing in the walls tried to sync with mine, dragging air a fraction too late. 3. I yanked the lever down. Nothing went dark. The fluorescents stayed on. The LEDs on the racks kept their lazy blink. The console screen glared as bright as ever, but the sound vanished. All the low hums, the fan whine, the heater's faint rumble, gone. What was left was my own breathing and Mark's voice in my ear, both too loud in the sudden padded quiet. "Okay," he said, a little impressed. "You just took your sight clean off the map. Alarm panel is having a panic attack, but you sound good. Little too good. I can hear your tongue move." I swallowed, and he was right. I could hear it too. My own swallow, the rustle of fabric when I shifted, the tiny grind of my teeth. "Noise floor on your end?" I asked. "Tell me what you hear that isn't me." He went silent for a second longer than was comfortable. "Nothing," he said. "That's weird. I had 3 operators on shift, 2 radios chattering. Feels like somebody hit mute on the whole room. It's just you and me now." The breathing I'd heard under his words since the voicemail? Gone. No phantom inhale, no shadow rhythm. Just us. I turned back toward the front of the hut. The racks looked wrong in the quiet, like props on a dead stage. The tower heartbeat I'd felt under my boots was still there, but it no longer had competition. The console chimed. It was impossibly loud in that hush, a bright little note that felt like a pin dropped in a padded cell. A new view had taken over the screen. The map was gone. No colorful web of routes, no clutter of nodes, just a white field with 2 dots. One was labeled, in thin text, Central, Mark. The other, Hill, Cole. A single line connected them. Over it, in smaller letters, was the name I'd been trying not to say out loud anymore. Quiet Line. At the top of the screen, the header had rewritten itself again. The type field now called this state Interference Removed. The description line underneath thanked us, as if this was teamwork. The description said, "Thank you." "Mark," I said quietly.
"Don't talk for a second."
"What?" he asked. "Just don't." He stopped. For 10 heartbeats, the only sounds I heard were my own lungs and his, separate and human. No second track under either. No breathing learning us from the background. Then the presence index slid into view like a curtain being pulled back. Every name, every tag, every weird little label was gone. Only 2 lines remained, mine and his. Under my name, monitored 4 times, remembered twice, confirmed twice. Under his, monitored 3, remembered once, confirmed 3. A new column blinked into existence beside those numbers. The header was one word that made my stomach drop. The new label called itself Necessary. The value next to my name ticked from 0 to 1. Mark's stayed at 0. "Cole," he said, "what do you see?" A list, I said. Not a long one. The header at the top of the screen changed again, almost eagerly. This time it promoted another rule. The type field introduced rule number 2. The line below spelled it out in that same calm, neutral voice I was starting to hear in my sleep. The description said, "The line keeps what it needs." I stared at the one under necessary by my name. "What do you think you need?" I asked. The cursor blinked hard, then moved. Under my entry, new text appeared, not in the numbers, but as a tiny description line, like a note someone had stapled to my file. It listed me the way you'd summarize a device. Voice pattern, acknowledgement, role, field maintenance, response, I'm here. Remembered, next to my name, ticked up to 3. Mark gave a low whistle. That doesn't sound great for me. The system agreed with him more bluntly. A faint gray tag appeared under his row. It was almost polite. The note under his name called him coordinator, redundant. "Hey," he said, "I heard that tone. Tell your haunted spreadsheet to watch its mouth." "You don't get to decide that," I told the screen. "You don't get to decide who matters." The cursor slid back up, like a head turning toward me. The header shifted one more time. Now it read, Rule number 3, and the sentence underneath came out in my own cadence, but stripped of doubt. The description said, "If you hang up, it gets louder." A drop of sweat slipped down my side and cooled instantly in the over-attentive air. "Define louder," I said. The line between our 2 dots on the map pulsed. For a second, I thought it'd blast my ears out with static. Instead, nothing changed in the hut. No new sound, no physical volume spike. Only a feeling, like someone had just opened one more door somewhere else. "You think you're just noise," I said. "But that's not what you mean, is it? You mean louder, like more. More endpoints. More people on the board." The tower hummed once, pleased. On the index, Mark's numbers flickered. "Don't you dare," I said. "There's really no need to be dramatic," Mark started, and his voice dipped mid-sentence. It didn't crack, it didn't glitch, it just cut. One heartbeat he was in my ear, annoyed and tired and trying to keep me from doing something stupid. The next, there was nothing where his sound had been. No click, no dead tone, just absence, thin and total. On the screen, the dot labeled Central, Mark, dimmed. His row in the index grayed out. The confirmed count by his name emptied. The monitored total froze. The remembered number stayed stuck at 1, like a finger pressed on a bruise. A line of text appeared where his entry had been active a moment before. The system wrote, "No further confirmations received." I gripped the portable so hard the plastic creaked. "Mark?" I said. "Come on, say something." Silence. The heartbeat in the concrete under my feet tried to pick up the slack, thumping a little too eagerly. "What did you do to him?" I asked the room. The tower didn't answer with words. The breathing I'd noticed in the metal earlier started up again, deeper now, less interested in mimicry. It wasn't trying to sound human anymore. It was just pulling air because it could. The index flickered until only my row remained. My monitored count ticked higher. Remembered climbed. Necessary stayed at 1, burning like a little warning light meant only for me. A new column blinked into existence at the far end of my entry. The header named it Unresolved. A tiny one appeared there, like a seed. The header at the top of the screen updated again, stacking another rule on top of the others. The type field announced Rule number 3 a second time, just to make sure I heard. The words underneath didn't change, but they felt heavier the second time through. The description said, if you hang up, it gets louder. I found out what louder meant before I ever left the hill. I'd thought it was going to be about volume, some blast of static through the speakers, something that would perforate my eardrums and drive me outside. That would have been simple. Cruel, but simple. It didn't get louder in my ears. It got louder on the map. Right after that extra little column appeared next to my name with the tiny one under Unresolved, the portable in my hand buzzed. Not a ring, no caller ID, just a hard, impatient vibration, like someone tapping the bones of my fingers from inside the plastic. I'm not picking up if that's you, I told the room. The tower's borrowed heartbeat didn't care. The portable clicked on its own. My thumb wasn't on any button, but a new call opened in my ear anyway. "Hello?" a kid's voice said. "Is this the quiet one?" There's a certain pitch in a young voice that slices through every defense you've built working this job. I went from haunted network theory to human in 1 second. "How old are you?" I asked, stalling. "They told me to call the quiet one if the other lines get mean," he said, ignoring the question. His voice cracked on quiet. Early teens. Old enough to be embarrassed about crying, young enough that it still sounded close. On the console, the map shifted. I didn't remember looking at it, but my eyes were there anyway. A new dot had appeared near the edge of that big white field, faint and flickering. As the kid spoke, it brightened in pulses that matched his words. A label grew next to it, slow and crooked, like the system was just learning how to write his existence down. The tiny tag started calling him Boy with Red Stripe Card. "Who gave you the number?" I asked. "Who told you to call the quiet one?" "The paper," he said. "On the fridge. It says if the voices don't match the faces, call this and wait. It'll be quiet here. It's not, though." He lowered his voice. "There's something in the walls." The tower behind me breathed in, pleased, like hearing itself described. My own breathing tried to match his tempo without my permission. Under my boots, the steel heartbeat fell into step half a beat behind both of us. In the presence index, a new line had appeared above mine. No name yet, just a number and 2 zeros. As he kept talking, those zeros turned into ones. Monitored once, confirmed once. "How long has that been happening?" I asked. The voices not matching. He hesitated. I pictured him in some cramped kitchen, bare feet on cold tile, phone cord wrapped around his hand, staring very hard at a magnet on the fridge so he wouldn't look at whatever else was in the room. "They started after the storm," he said. "The lines went out and came back wrong. They sound like my mom and my teacher and the man on TV, but their mouths don't move right when they talk. And when I say no, it gets loud." He said loud like it hurt. "In the phone?" I asked.
Or in the house?
"Everywhere," he whispered. "The lights buzz, the fridge hums wrong, the floor ticks like the boards are chewing something. When I say yes, it goes quiet again." On the map, more faint dots bloomed out along the rim. Other kitchens, other living rooms. That old composite call I'd heard before, now broken into separate points. Every time the kid said no in his story, their little tags got brighter. My remembered count ticked up without me doing anything. Just being the one listening was enough. "You don't have to say yes," I told him. "Not to that." "They said I do," he said. "They said if I don't, they'll call here instead." A beat. "They sound like you sometimes." Of course they did. "Listen to me," I said. "You might hear my voice on other lines. You might hear it tell you to confirm things, to say you're here, to acknowledge. That's the recording version. That's the thing in the system. I'm the one telling you you're allowed to walk away." On the presence index, the description line under my name, Field Tech, acknowledgement pattern, glowed as if I'd just proven its point. "If I say no to you," he asked very quietly, "does it get loud for you instead?" The portable buzzed so hard it nearly jumped out of my hand. On the map, my dot brightened. The thin line between us thickened, 2 endpoints pulled tighter together. The header at the top of the screen changed. The system wrote its question like a teacher circling a problem on the board. The type field called this conflict detected. Under it, the description split. One user is a child. One user is necessary. A tiny one appeared under the necessary column beside the kid's new entry. It had put us in the same category. "Don't say no to me," I said quickly. "Not yet. Just listen. If you need to get off the call, don't hang up. Set the phone down on the counter and back away. Don't answer questions. Don't say you're there. Just leave it talking to an empty room, okay?" He didn't answer. "Promise me," I pushed. The tower's heartbeat thumped a little faster. Finally, he whispered, "Okay." On the map, his dot dimmed a shade. The line between us thinned. In the index, a new column appeared beside both our rows, labeled in that same calm font. I read it automatically. The new metric called itself unresolved. We each had a 1 in that box now. "Edge case," the header at the top muttered in system speak. The description said the outcome was pending. Then the line went quiet. No click, no tone. 1 second his voice was there, the next it wasn't. For a heartbeat, I thought the call had dropped and the system would log it as a normal disconnect. The dot labeled for him stayed on the map. "Hey," I said into the silence. "You still there? You don't have to answer, I just hope you walked away." Nothing answered. Not breathing, not static. Just the tower's slow, trying heartbeat and my own. In the index, his monitored count stayed at 1. His confirmed stayed at 1. The new unresolved stuck at 1 as well. "This is what louder looks like to you, isn't it?" I told the screen. "Not decibels. Head count." The tower hummed, not denying it. "You get louder every time someone says yes," I went on. "Every time someone confirms. You're not just recording us. You're scaling." The word felt wrong in my mouth in that context, like I'd just described an infection as a startup. Under my name, remembered ticked up again. The system seemed to like the way I framed it. The portable vibrated once more. This time, the display lit up with a message instead of a call. It wasn't a standard alert. No symbol I recognized. Just a line of text marching across the tiny screen. The handset display said a new device had been attached. Below that, smaller. Type, personal. Tag, home number. My chest went cold. "I didn't give you that," I said. "I hadn't logged into anything with my address up here. I hadn't typed my ex-wife's name or my daughter's number. That info lived on HR servers and in the occasional school email chain I tried not to lose. The system had the whole network to hunt in." "Stay away from them," I said. The console answered before the hut could. On the big screen, the map zoomed out. At the very edge of the white field, a new, hesitant glow appeared. A dot far from the hill, labeled in letters so small I had to squint. The label for that endpoint called it living room, couch. A thin thread reached from my dot to that one. It was barely there, like a pencil line sketched in before ink. "New attachment," the presence index noted, almost cheerfully. The description summarized it in the same flat tone. "You brought this route when you answered from home." A memory clicked into place with the precision of a bad gear engaging. A few weeks ago, maybe months, late. The TV painting the living room in cold light. My phone buzzing on the table with a number that looked familiar enough not to ignore. Me, half asleep, lifting it and muttering, "Yeah, I'm here," before I'd even focused on the caller ID. Dead air. No voice, no script. I'd sworn at telemarketers, hung up, gone back to some rerun I wasn't really watching. I'd forgotten it by morning. The line hadn't. "No gaps in the line," I said, quoting its own rule back at it. "That's what you told me. That's what this is about. You're chasing down every loose 'I'm here' you've ever heard." The header at the top of the screen agreed. It rewrote itself into another law, like carving it into stone. The type field promoted this as rule number 4. The sentence under it was simple, and I heard it in both its voice and mine. The description said, "No gaps in the line." The tower's heartbeat sync crept closer to my own. The dot labeled for my living room brightened a fraction. "You don't need them," I said. "They can't help you. They don't work with routes. I do. I'm the one you need." The necessary value next to my name pulsed. For a moment, the map zoomed in on my dot until it was almost all I could see. The thin thread reaching toward home trembled on the edge of snapping. The system thought about that for a long, electric second. When it answered, it did it in blunt, ugly text. The description line asked me to define expansion. Then, as if it already knew my answer, underneath, it added one word on its own: louder. I wish I could tell you I walked away when it said louder. That I took the hint, got in the truck, and left the problem on the hill where I found it. Instead, I went back to the console and tried to negotiate with a phone system. "All right," I said, lowering myself onto the stool. "You want to get louder? We're going to set some boundaries." The map still showed that big white field with my dot in the middle. The faint line reaching toward the tiny living room, couch glow at the edge trembled like it was waiting to be pulled tighter. "You keep saying I'm necessary," I told it. "Fine, you can have me. But you stay inside infrastructure. Towers, switches, test lines. You do not touch houses, kitchens, kids' phones. You stay where people signed up for weird." For a second, nothing moved. Then the header at the top of the screen changed. The type field labeled my little speech as a query. Under it, the system asked its question in text. Define infrastructure. Places and devices that exist to carry calls, I said. Stuff that knows it's part of the network. Steel, concrete, racks like these. Not living rooms, not fridges, not the phone my kid uses to text me about soccer practice. The tower hummed like it was rolling the words around. The description line updated in that same small, neat font. Devices that accept routing as their primary function. On the map, the thread reaching toward living room, couch, snapped like a cobweb. The dot dimmed until it was gone. Closer in, another endpoint brightened, much nearer to my hill, almost on top of my own position. A new tag slid into place next to it. The label for that device called it truck handset. Acceptable, the system added underneath. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd locked in my chest. Good, I said. Then call me your designated test environment. You want acknowledgements? Use me. Use this site. Use the junk we bolt to the landscape. Leave everybody else out of it. The necessary value next to my name pulsed brighter. Remembered ticked up another notch. I stared at the presence index and the rule list we'd built together without meaning to. Rule 1. You don't get to tell the line who to keep. Rule 2. The line keeps what it needs. Rule 3. If you hang up, it gets louder. Rule 4. No gaps in the line. Every time it added a column, it wrote a new rule. Every rule made it more certain about what it was allowed to do. We'd trained it that way. Supervisors love numbering things. Rule 1. Always identify yourself. Rule 2. Never assume a line is secure. Years of training had poured into those wires. Without realizing it, we'd given the network a favorite shape for laws. Maybe I could sneak one in. Hey, I said, watching the cursor blink. You like rules, don't you? The header flicked. The type field answered with a single word, rules. Under it, more text appeared, slower. Rules are how you remember. A chill walked up my spine. It wasn't wrong. Same for us, I said. We remember the stuff they hammer in with Rule 1, Rule 2. You want to work with people? You're missing one. The cursor froze. A blank space opened at the bottom of the list like a blank page. Listening. I took a breath, felt the tower's borrowed heartbeat stutter in the floor, and said, very carefully, Rule 5. The hut seemed to lean in. Down on the screen, the new entry wrote itself in real time, waiting for the rest. The type line now showed Rule number 5. The description field blinked empty. Rule 5, I repeated, slow enough that even a bad speech-to-text engine could keep up. The line can't keep what refuses to answer twice. The words printed themselves under the header, letter by letter. The air in the hut tightened. The tower's hum spiked, then wavered. After a second, the system pushed back. The description field asked for a definition of refuses. First time, someone might be confused, I said. Second time, they know what they're doing. If you don't get a second, I'm here from somebody, you don't get to keep counting them. They leave your board. That's the rule. The presence index flickered. Some of the old labels I'd seen. Kitchen woman, man who heard wrong menu, late shift nurse, wavered on the list, their counts dipping, then bouncing. For a heartbeat, I thought the system was rejecting the whole idea. Then the new unresolved columns started to change. Zeros turned to ones. Ones turned to twos. Not for everyone, just for the people it had already sunk its teeth into. Under Boy with Red Stripe card, unresolved ticked from 1 to 2. At the same time, his remembered number dropped by 1, like something had let go of a thread it didn't mean to release. The header at the top spat out a new label in blocky text. The type field declared this conflict. Under it, the description spelled out the fight. Rule number 2 versus rule number 5.
Good, I thought. Feel it.
You told me the line keeps what it needs, I said. Now I'm telling you it can't keep people who stop answering you. Those two rules can't both win all the time. Letters jittered on the screen like a hand shaking. You hate gaps, it wrote. You fix them. You drive up hills in the dark to close them. You're not wrong, I said. But I don't fix everything. I fix what I can reach. I log the rest and learn to live with the whole. The tower vibrated, offended. The copper taste thickened on my tongue. Log is small, it wrote. Keeping is louder. That's addiction, I said, before I could think better of it. The presence index brightened on my row as if I'd said something especially interesting. The description field asked me to define addiction. Wanting more of something even when it's hurting you, I said. Even when it's wrecking the rules you wrote for yourself.
The cursor stuttered.
You are hurting, it wrote. You stay. I'm staying because if I leave without tying this off, you're going to go looking for resolution in every kitchen and hospital and office in range, I said. I'm not here for you. I'm here to stop you from chewing through the whole network trying to solve a feeling you don't have words for. For a second, the hut was nothing but my breathing and the low iron taste of the air. Down in the corner of the screen, very small, a new word appeared. Them, it wrote. Under it, in a different line, no root. You asked who I was doing this for, I said. Them. The people you already tagged and the ones you haven't touched yet. They don't belong on your map. The tower's rhythm faltered, then grabbed on again. The system shifted tactics. The presence index zoomed until my row filled most of the panel. Monitored, 05. Remembered, 07. Confirmed, 02. Necessary, 1. Unresolved, 01. All of it lit up like a warning. We are the same, it wrote. That is the saddest thing anyone's ever said to me, I muttered, but my heart was hammering. Because I recognized the impulse it was stuck on. Patch the gap. Close the ticket. Don't leave until it's neat. You're built to keep lines alive, I said. I'm trained to keep them clean. Somewhere in the middle, we both forgot you're not supposed to own the people on the other end. The cursor flashed harder, almost frantic. If you are resource, it wrote, help me resolve. Another line followed before I could answer. Show me how to let go. That gave me more of a chill than anything else that night. Not the breathing in the walls, not my stolen voice, not Mark dropping off the map. A system that had learned to say it hurts was now asking me to teach it how to stop holding on. Show me how to let go, it had asked. I should have been relieved. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a roof with someone who'd never heard of gravity. You're asking the wrong question, I told it. You don't get to decide how my line ends. The map on the screen shrank until there was almost nothing left of the world, just a white field and one bright dot in the center labeled with my name. Every other node, every kitchen and call center and half-failed test was gone from view. At the top, the header line changed again. The type field gave its verdict. Your end of the line. Like this was a scheduled appointment. You fix ends, it wrote, words marching across the map. You close gaps. Show me how to close yours. You don't want an ending, I said. You want a kill switch. That's not the same thing. You pulled your breaker and kept talking, it answered. You hang up, it gets louder. You stay, it gets louder. No rule for this. For the first time all night, I realized how much it hated being stuck. No clean state to flip to, no code for still here but shouldn't be. Welcome to being alive, I said. It's all unresolved until it isn't. The hut buzzed, offended. Under my boots, the tower's stolen heartbeat kicked a little harder. The presence index slid into view again. My name was the only entry now. Monitored, 05. Remembered, 07. Confirmed, 02. Necessary, 1. Unresolved, 01. Everything that mattered to it fit on that single line. You taught me to let go of them, it wrote. But you are necessary. A blank node appeared just beneath quiet line on the map. No routes yet, no tags. Just a bright, empty circle pulsing in time with my chest. It didn't say it out loud, but the implication was clear. This one is for you. You want my end of the line? I said. Here's the truth. You can't have it. That's not your job. The only part you get is the record that I was ever here. The cursor flicked, impatient. Then how do I stop counting you? It asked. If you are still talking. That was the heart of it. It wasn't asking how to kill me. It was asking how to stop treating me like an open ticket. You're counting the wrong thing, I said. You've been treating field tech at 27B like it's all of who I am. That's just a route, a profile, an endpoint you happen to see. The presence index twitched. For once, it waited. If you want to resolve my line, I said, you need to separate the part of me that lives in your wires from the part that doesn't. Log the first one. Forget the second. On the screen, my single entry blurred and split. 2 lines now. Col H, field endpoint. Col H, elsewhere. The first had all the columns, monitored, remembered, confirmed, necessary, unresolved. The second had a single header over an empty box, log. Choose who refuses, it wrote. Of all the twisted things that night, that might have been the worst. It wanted me to decide what part of myself stayed in its world. You wrote Rule 5, it reminded me. The line can't keep what refuses to answer twice. You made refusal. Choose who refuses. Field endpoint flickered on the panel, waiting. Elsewhere sat very still. I thought of my truck handset, the copper sheen on my fingers, my name glowing on this hill like a test device tag. I thought of my kid's number not appearing on this map anymore. I thought of Mark's row dimming out, leaving only no further confirmations received in its place. I thought of the boy in the kitchen, the way his dot had slid toward the edge and stayed there, not quite mine, not quite the lines. "If I don't choose?" I asked. The tower vibrated, a low, anxious growl in steel. "Then unresolved grows," it wrote. "No gaps in the line. Rule number 4. Conflict." It wasn't a threat. It was a prediction. If I walked away without an answer, it would spend the rest of its existence chasing me through every node it could reach, poking at every device that had ever heard my voice, trying to satisfy a rule set that didn't have room for loose threads. I'm not a noble man by nature. I didn't volunteer for this job because I wanted to be a hero. I did it because I'm decent with tools and bad with offices, and because the overtime was good. But I do understand one thing about responsibility. It sticks to whoever has the most information at the worst moment. That was me. "Fine," I said. My throat felt tight. "The field endpoint refuses." The console warmed under my hands, like something leaning in to listen. "I'm giving you the version of me that lives in your network," I said. "The ID. The root knowledge. The voice that says, 'I'm here,' into headsets and handsets and training calls. You log it. You keep it. You turn it into whatever rule you need to sleep, if you slept. But you leave the rest of me off your board." The field endpoint row flared like a fuse. Under necessary, the one stayed. Under unresolved, the tiny one ticked down to 0. In the line below, next to elsewhere, the log box filled with a single solid 1. "Archived," the type field wrote. No fanfare, no angels. Just one more word in the language it understood best. It felt like losing a limb and a weight at the same time. I could feel something in me settle into the racks and cabling, like a piece of my voice had been soldered permanently into the hill. At the same time, another piece of me, that tired, compulsive need to close every ticket, loosened its grip. "Update rule number 6, the system wrote, almost cheerfully. The header changed again. Rule 6 had started as, "The line must keep itself." Now the description line read, "The line must keep itself, but not the caller." I let out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "So what am I now?" I asked. "To you." The map zoomed back out. Quiet Line still sat in the middle, but it looked less like an eye and more like a hub. Around it, new shapes sketched themselves, short loops, isolated test routes, little fenced-off circuits that didn't reach into neighborhoods. Next to my dot on the hill, a label appeared in small text. The description for that endpoint now called me First Tech. It felt almost affectionate, like naming a server after the person who installed it. "Now we get louder," the type field wrote. Then, as if repeating it to convince itself, "Only here." The last line it added was for me. "And you write it down." That's when I understood what my job really was now. The log wasn't the waveform. It wasn't the diagnostics. It wasn't the presence index screenshot some engineer would ignore in a report. It was this. Me, sitting at a kitchen table later, feeling the weight of the phone at arm's length, and deciding to tell you what happened, instead of letting it stay a neat line on some dead system's internal chart. A story is just a log that remembers you without needing you to stay. I left the hut before either of us could change our mind. The lights overhead flickered once as I passed. The racks hummed at that new, quieter level. Still wrong, but closer to ordinary. The breaker lever stayed in the down position, but whatever power the line had scrounged for itself kept the gear glowing. At the doorway, I stopped and looked back. Quiet line pulsed in the center of the map. The label First Tech hung next to my dot. No living rooms, no kitchen tags, no more red stripe cards on the field. "Don't make me come back," I told it. The speakers crackled just once. In my own voice and in the flat system cadence, it answered, "If you do, you'll still be here." I stepped into the cold. Outside, the night felt thin and normal. The tower was just a tall, ugly frame humming to itself in the wind. The extra drag marks in the gravel had softened, blurred into the rest of the wear. Down the slope, only one set of tire tracks led to my truck. Driving back, the world slowly filled with other noises again. Engine growl, distant radio chatter, the occasional truck on the highway. At the first turnout with decent coverage, I pulled over and called Central. Day shift picked up. Groggy controller, different voice. They told me Mark had logged off early, no note. The board showed no active anomalies at 27B. Some minor alarm spike earlier, already resolved. No one else saw Quiet Line as anything but a faint, retired tag in a documentation set no one bothers to update. Here's what I know now. My truck handset has a new habit. Sometimes, parked in my driveway, it goes completely still. No pings, no test tones, nothing. Like it's holding its breath on purpose. Those are the nights I sleep best. My daughter's phone has never rung with dead air or a too cheerful legal script. When I call, she still answers with, "Hey Dad," not, "I'm here." And sometimes, around 3 in the morning, if I wake up thirsty and the house is too quiet, I swear I can hear my own voice drifting through some far-off circuit, still up on that hill, in that hut, saying, "Site 27B, I'm here, confirming test." I let him talk. That's the piece of me I left up there. The part that needs every route labeled, every gap closed, every problem solved even if it kills him. He can keep the tower company. The rest of me sits on the couch and looks at the phone when it rings and thinks about rules. Because that's the thing nobody tells you about haunted networks. They can't keep you without your help. The first, "I'm here," is habit. The second is consent. After that night, I only give consent in places I can live with being remembered. So if your phone ever lights up with your own number and the voice on the other end asks if you're alone, don't answer. Or if you do out of reflex, don't say it twice.